We hadn't touched each other in 6 months, but I still folded his socks like it meant something. It was early, around 6:10 a.m., and the kitchen light made everything look yellow and sick. Outside, it was raining, that thin, whispery kind of drizzle that never really stops. The ceiling fan hummed above me, slow and steady. My coffee had gone cold again. I'm a 51-year-old middle school vice principal living in Lexington, Kentucky. Been married to the same man, Darren, for almost 24 years. No big drama in our life. Just the kind of quiet drift you don't notice until you're in a different zip code emotionally. He barely looked at me anymore. When he did, it felt like I was just background noise. I don't think he even saw my face when he came home. Just walked through the door, dropped his keys on the scratched oak counter, kicked off his muddy Skechers, and collapsed into that ancient La Z-Boy with the ripped armrest. Like clockwork. I can't remember the last time we laughed. Or the last time he touched my arm just because. Most nights, I sat on the bed with my buzzing Samsung Galaxy A14, scrolling until my eyes hurt. Pinterest recipes I'd never make. Videos of people reuniting with dogs. And, lately, Discord. Yeah. Weird, I know. But one of my former students invited me to this small teachers group, and somehow it became my place. I'd post memes about staff meetings and PDA drama. People laughed. Reacted. One of them, username Northpier68, started messaging me privately. He told me he was a high school counselor in Michigan. Said his name was Lane. We started off joking about grading rubrics and annoying parents. Then it turned into late-night voice chats. Quiet talks. Deep ones. I found myself looking forward to his name lighting up more than anything else in my day. Lane had this gravelly voice, soft like radio static at night. He said things Darren hadn't said in decades. You've got a calming presence, you know that? No one listens like you do. God help me, I soaked it up. I told myself it was harmless. Just someone to talk to. But I started dressing a little nicer for our video calls. Brushed my hair. Wore lipstick once, just for the camera. Told him I wasn't married. I don't know why I said that. Maybe because I wanted it to feel true. We'd talk about books, he loved Jonathan Franzen too, and he'd send me tracks on Spotify. Once, he said, I wish I could sit beside you and play this one on vinyl. I closed my eyes and pictured it. One night, after a glass and a half of boxed wine from Walmart, I sent him a voice note. Whispered it. Something like, I don't know what this is. But it makes me feel, not invisible. There was a pause before he replied. Just breath. Then. I feel the same. You make the nights easier. I went to bed that night in my worn Ralph Lauren shirt and curled up with that awful book I kept hidden, Do You Hate the One You Love, and cried until my throat hurt. The next day, I forgot to log out of Discord before going to work. It was 6th period. Rain still drizzled. I was standing by the copier when my phone buzzed with a voice message. And that was the moment. The copier was loud, so I hit play without thinking. Put it to my ear. Last night I dreamt you were in my passenger seat, Lane whispered. We didn't say anything. You just reached over and touched my wrist. I froze. I didn't realize until I looked up that Jared, the new IT guy, had heard it. He was staring at me. Then he walked away, no expression, no comment. Just left. I felt my stomach drop into my shoes. And that wasn't even the worst part. When I got home, Darren was already there. That never happens. He usually works late at the shop. But tonight, he was sitting at the kitchen table. Silent. In front of him was my tablet. Open. Lit up. Discord still running. He didn't say a word. Just slid the device across the table toward me. Then he stood up and dropped something on the counter next to the Perrier bottle I'd bought myself as a treat. A motel receipt. 2 nights. Downtown. My name on it. I hadn't even used it yet. I hadn't even gone that far. But I had booked it. I watched the receipt flutter slightly in the air from the ceiling fan. And I realized. He knew. Everything. I opened my mouth to speak. But he'd already walked out the door. The silence after he left was louder than any fight we'd ever had. I just stood there, staring at the receipt on the counter. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. From something messier. Something that felt like guilt and defiance braided together. The ceiling fan kept humming above me. Slow. Unbothered. The kitchen light buzzed, flickering a little. I didn't move. Didn't breathe right. I just stood there while the rain kept tapping on the windows like it had nowhere else to go either. Eventually, I sat down. I stared at my tablet. Discord still open. Lane's name at the top. The voice note still glowing blue. My reflection in the screen looked pale and older than I remembered. I reached over, shut the whole thing down, and pushed it aside like that would undo it. But it was all still there. In the air. In the receipt. In the front door that was still swinging a little from Darren walking out. I didn't even know what I was supposed to do next. I poured myself a glass of wine, cheap, box on the counter red, and stood at the window. Our neighbor's porch light flickered across the street. Some kid's bike was tipped over in the yard. Ordinary things, still doing their ordinary thing while my life cracked open like dry plaster. My phone buzzed. It was Lane. Everything okay? You've been quiet. I didn't answer. 5 minutes later, another one. I miss your voice. I threw the phone onto the couch and sat down beside it, knees tucked up like a child. I tried to think about when exactly this had started spiraling. When just chatting became me booking a motel room under my own name. When harmless turned to hiding. When I stopped being the person who folded Darren's socks with care and started being someone who sent voice notes to a stranger about my dreams. No. Not a stranger. That was the problem. Lane didn't feel like a stranger. He felt like someone who listened. Someone who saw me. And God help me. I needed that. I hadn't realized how badly until it was already too late. Back in December, Darren and I went to his company's holiday dinner at some tired steakhouse. Everyone was talking over each other. Cheap Christmas lights blinking in weird rhythms. I wore this green velvet dress I'd found on clearance and even curled my hair. I remember standing there next to him while he talked to his buddy from accounting and thinking. I could disappear right now and no one would notice. That night, he fell asleep watching reruns of Gold Rush. I sat in the bathroom for 20 minutes just to be alone. That was the first time I opened Discord on my phone and saw Lane's message blinking. Hey. You awake? Simple. Casual. But it felt like an anchor in a storm I didn't realize I was in. We started slow. Memes. Education rants. Jokes about the system. Then came the deeper stuff. His divorce. My quiet sadness. The way he talked about his record player and the smell of his grandmother's house. I remember writing, "You ever feel like your life got hijacked while you were busy doing laundry?" He replied, "Every day." It was intoxicating. And I convinced myself it was safe because we'd never touched. But now I'd booked the room. Now Darren knew. I curled up on the couch with the old MLB cap Darren had worn on our trip to Asheville 2 years ago. I held it like it could explain something. Like it remembered a version of us that still made sense. I don't know how long I sat there. Maybe an hour. Maybe 3. Eventually, I checked my phone again. 5 more messages from Lane. You okay? Please say something. I'm sorry if I pushed too far. I can back off. Just, let me know you're alright. Don't disappear on me. I stared at the screen, wondering how he'd sound if I called. If his voice would still make me feel calm, or if it'd feel tainted now. I didn't know anymore. Then, another sound. A car pulling into the driveway. My whole body tensed. I stood up too fast, wine glass tipping but not spilling. The porch light flicked on. And then the door opened. Darren walked in, holding something in his hand. His face was unreadable. Calm, even. That scared me more than yelling ever would. He held up my spare phone, the one I kept in my bedside drawer. The one I hadn't used since March. The one that buzzed last night when I wasn't paying attention. Burner phone. I'd bought it when I was still telling myself I was just talking to Lane for company. Before it turned into voice messages about dreams and wrist touches and vinyl records and motel bookings. He set the phone on the table next to the tablet. Then looked at me. Not angry. Just hollow. I was going to surprise you with dinner tonight, he said softly. Picked up that teriyaki chicken you like from Jin's. Silence stretched like chewing gum. But this was on, he added, nodding at the burner. You forgot to mute it. I tried to speak. Couldn't. He stepped back. Just one step. But it felt like a chasm opened between us. Tell me, he said. Tell me what you were planning to do with him tomorrow night. My voice caught. He already knew. He knew everything. And now? Now I had to say it out loud. I didn't answer him right away. My mouth was dry. My heart? It wasn't beating right, it felt like it was skipping, stopping, jerking forward in waves I couldn't control. I looked at him, standing there with both my phones in front of him like evidence laid out in court. And I was guilty. No defense. No twist. Just, caught. The burner phone screen was cracked across the corner. I dropped it in the school parking lot 2 weeks ago and meant to get it fixed, but never did. Another loose end in a pile of them. Darren didn't move. He just stood there, his hand resting on the table, the other holding onto the chair like he needed something to keep him upright. The room was quiet, except for the rain tapping the window and the soft whir of the ceiling fan that never seemed to stop. I finally sat down across from him. My legs felt numb. My voice came out lower than I expected. I wasn't going to go through with it. His eyebrows lifted, barely. No anger. No shock. Just, bone-deep disappointment. But you booked the room, he said, calm as ever. You planned it. That's the part you can't unplan. I nodded slowly. There was no point lying now. I didn't sleep with him, I whispered. Darren gave a small, humorless laugh and looked at the ceiling like he wanted to scream but didn't have the energy. Is that supposed to make it better? No, I said. It's just the truth. Silence. He finally sat down, the chair creaking beneath him. His hands were shaking. Just slightly. I noticed because I couldn't look him in the eyes for more than a second. I've been trying to figure it out, he said quietly. When it started. When I lost you. I wanted to answer. I really did. But everything I could say sounded like an excuse, and nothing about this deserved one. He leaned back, crossing his arms over his chest. He looked tired in a way I'd never seen before. This man, who'd fixed our pipes with duct tape and optimism. Who once drove 2 hours to find a replacement wheel for my favorite suitcase because I said I didn't want to buy a new one. He wasn't perfect. God knows we'd had our fights. But he was constant. And I'd been fading behind his back. It started as a joke, I finally said, the words sticking to my tongue. Just messages. Memes. Work stuff. He made me feel heard. Darren shook his head slowly. You don't think I tried? That hit harder than I expected. I looked at him fully now. I didn't say you didn't, I said, too fast. It wasn't about you doing something wrong. He leaned forward, eyes sharp. Then what was it about? That question was everything. I stared at my hands. My chipped nail polish. The faint line on my ring finger where I used to wear a gold band that had gotten too tight years ago and I never bothered to resize. I felt invisible, I said. He blinked. Invisible, I repeated. Like I could walk through this house every day and nothing would change. Like I could vanish mid-sentence and no one would notice. Darren's face softened, but only for a moment. And him? He asked. He made you feel, what? Wanted, I said. Not even physically. Just, like my thoughts mattered. Like I was more than the role I played in this house. He looked down. His voice cracked when he spoke again. You could have said something. I did, I said quickly. In 1,000 quiet ways. You just didn't hear me. That sounded cruel, even to my own ears. I didn't mean it as a dagger. But it was the truth. Or my truth, anyway. He nodded slowly. So what happens now? I didn't know. Wasn't that the worst part? I haven't seen him, I said. In person, I mean. Just video calls. Messages. The room, it was a fantasy. A step I never took. But you were going to, he said, voice low. I closed my eyes. I don't know, I whispered. Maybe. We sat in that awful quiet again. The air between us felt different. Not just heavy, but unfamiliar. Like we were strangers who knew too much about each other. He finally stood up. You need to end it, he said. Whatever this is. Him. The messages. The app. The idea of it. I will, I said, standing too. I already did. No, he said, pointing at the phone. Do it now. While I'm here. So I did. I powered on the burner, hands trembling, and opened Discord. Lane had just messaged. Are you okay? I've been freaking out. I stared at it for a long second. Then I typed. I can't talk to you anymore. This isn't who I want to be. He saw it instantly. He replied. Wait. Please don't do this. Let's just talk. But I didn't respond. I closed the app. Deleted it. Powered down the phone. Then I picked up my regular phone, opened our text thread, and blocked his number. I showed Darren everything. He didn't say anything. He just turned away and walked down the hall. I didn't follow him. I sat back down at the kitchen table, staring at the cold Perrier can from earlier, now gathering condensation in a perfect little ring on the counter. Outside, the rain had stopped. But in my chest, it hadn't. The house didn't feel like mine anymore. Not really. Not in the way it used to. It was still filled with our things, our framed pictures, our chipped coffee mugs, that ugly green rug we argued about for 3 years but never replaced. But now everything felt like it belonged to a version of us that no longer existed. I spent most of that Sunday cleaning. Not out of guilt. Or maybe it was. but mostly because I needed to move. I needed to do something that didn't involve crying or staring at walls. I scrubbed the baseboards, washed the windows, took every towel out of the linen closet, refolded them, and put them back in tighter stacks. Darren stayed in the bedroom the whole time. Door shut. Quiet. Every so often, I'd hear the floor creak or the bed shift, but that was it. No music. No TV. Just the quiet weight of two people trying to unspool the last 24 years in their heads. Late afternoon, I made myself a cup of black tea and sat on the porch. The sun was out now, finally, and I watched the neighbor's dog chase squirrels through their yard like none of this had happened. My own world was tilting, and theirs stayed exactly the same. That stung more than I expected. My phone buzzed in my lap. Not Lane. Not anyone from work. It was my sister, Jess. Hey. Just checking in. You've been quiet. I hadn't told her anything. I didn't know how. What would I say? Hey, remember that app one told you about? The one with the teacher memes and the group chat? Yeah, I emotionally cheated on my husband with a stranger and now everything is broken. I put the phone down without replying. At around 6, Darren came out of the bedroom. He looked smaller. Not physically, but like someone had drained the color out of him. He still wore the same flannel shirt he'd put on the day before. His hair was messy. His eyes, dull. He stood in the kitchen for a minute like he wasn't sure why he was there. Then he opened the fridge, grabbed a bottle of orange Gatorade, and leaned against the counter. We didn't say anything. For a long time. Then, without looking up, he said, "You deleted him?" It wasn't a challenge. Just a quiet question. I nodded. Show me. I handed him my phone. He scrolled. Checked the messages. Looked at the blocked contacts. Set it down. Okay, he said, then turned toward the hallway. Darren, I said. He stopped but didn't face me. I know this doesn't fix anything, I said. But I want to. I want to fix it. I don't know how, but I want to try. Still, he didn't turn. I didn't do it because of you, I added. I did it because I was lonely. That's not your fault. That's something broken inside me I didn't want to admit. He nodded once. Then he went back to the bedroom. And shut the door. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay on the couch, wrapped in a thin throw blanket that smelled faintly of dryer sheets and whatever candle I burned last week, coconut something. My head buzzed with fragments of the past year. All the little moments that led to this. All the chances I had to say something before it became this big, bleeding wound between us. At one point, around 2:30 a.m., I opened my email to delete my Discord account entirely. I hovered over the confirmation button. Paused. Then closed it. Not because I wanted to keep it. I didn't. But because it felt too final in a moment where everything already felt like it was ending. Like I needed just one thing I could still decide later. Stupid. In the morning, Darren was gone. No note. No message. Just his keys missing from the hook and his work boots gone from the mat. I stood there in the foyer, staring at the empty space where they usually Saturday. It felt like another piece of him had been peeled away. By noon, I still hadn't heard from him. I texted. Are you okay? No reply. At 2:17, I texted again. Can we talk later tonight? Still nothing. I knew he needed space. I'd told myself I'd give it to him. But it's different when you're the one pacing the hallway, watching the front door like it might open if you just stare hard enough. By 4 o'clock, I was spiraling. I almost texted Lane. I opened the App Store. Downloaded Discord again. Typed in my login. Paused. Then deleted it before I could hit sign in. I threw my phone onto the couch. I was still sitting there, arms around my knees, when I heard a car pull up. My heart jumped. I ran to the window. It wasn't Darren. It was Jess. I opened the door before she even knocked. She held up 2 large iced coffees and a bag from the bakery on 4th. I had a feeling, she said. I didn't cry. Not yet. I just nodded and stepped aside to let her in. And for the first time since all of this started, I let someone else into the wreckage. Jess didn't ask anything right away. She just handed me the coffee, sweetened vanilla cold brew, just how I used to take it, and sat on the couch like it was any other Sunday. Like I hadn't just watched my marriage get run over by a digital freight train. We sat in silence for a few minutes. The kind of silence that only works when someone really knows you. She opened the bakery bag and pulled out a blueberry scone. Broke it in half. Set one piece on a napkin in front of me like she used to when we were kids sharing snacks during Saturday morning cartoons. Finally, she said, "So, is it Darren?" I nodded. She sighed and leaned back. "Do you want to talk about it?" I didn't answer right away. I took a bite of the scone, dry and overly crumbly, and forced myself to swallow. Then I said it. Out loud. For the first time. I got too close to someone online. She blinked but didn't say anything. A guy I met through work forums. Discord. It was just messages at first. Voice notes. Calls. Nothing physical. But it felt like a thing. Like something real. Jess nodded slowly. And Darren found out? Yeah, I said, my voice rough. Found the burner phone. Saw the messages. There was a hotel room booked and everything. I watched her face, expecting a gasp or judgment or some big reaction. But she just looked at me, quiet, steady. You didn't go, though? No. I was supposed to meet him, yesterday. Jess sat back against the armrest, crossed her legs. But you didn't. No, I said again. I cancelled it. I blocked him. I showed Darren everything. She tilted her head a little. Why didn't you go? I looked down at my coffee. The ice had started to melt, forming a thin ring of water on the side table. Because it wasn't just about wanting him, I said. It was about wanting me back. The version of me that felt exciting, desired, interesting. And in the end, I didn't think he had that to offer either. Not really. Jess nodded slowly, processing. So what now? I laughed under my breath. Bitter. I don't know. Darren hasn't answered any of my texts. He's staying somewhere else. He didn't say where. Jess leaned forward, elbows on her knees. Do you want him back? That question hit harder than I expected. Yes, I said immediately. Then paused. I think I do. I closed my eyes and sighed. I don't know. I miss the way things used to feel. But that version of us is long gone. And the person I was becoming with Lane, that scared me. Jess reached over and put her hand on mine. You're not a bad person, she said softly. You just, human. Lonely. And this world makes it so easy to step out of line without even realizing it. I felt tears building behind my eyes but didn't let them fall. I told myself it was just harmless. Just laughs. Just someone to talk to after long days. But it was never harmless. It was this slow, quiet drift into something real. She nodded. It's like erosion, she said. one small wave at a time. I wiped at my eyes, finally letting a few tears spill. And now I don't even know if there's anything left to fix. Jess sat with me for another hour. We didn't say much more. Just Saturday. Let the house breathe a little. Let me cry without needing to explain each drop. When she finally stood to leave, she hugged me tighter than she had in years. Whatever happens next, she whispered, you're not alone in it. After she left, I walked the house again. Room by room. The kitchen still smelled faintly like burnt toast from breakfast. The bathroom light still buzzed when I turned it on. The bedroom. I couldn't go in. Not yet. Instead, I sat at the small desk in the den and opened my laptop. No messages. No alerts. No Discord. Just a blinking cursor on a blank screen. I opened a new document and typed one sentence. This is where it broke. I stared at it for a long time. Then added. But it's not where it ends. That night, around 10:30, I heard a car pull into the driveway. My heart jolted. I didn't move at first. Just listened. Waited. The front door opened. And Darren stepped inside. He looked exhausted. He didn't say a word at first. Just stood there, keys still in hand. Then he looked at me. I stayed at Joel's, he said. In the guest room. I didn't want to make any decisions when I was still boiling. I nodded slowly. Do you want to talk? I asked. He nodded once. But his eyes didn't meet mine. Instead, he walked past me, toward the kitchen, and opened the fridge like he still lived here. Like he still had permission to touch the things inside. Then he paused, one hand resting on the fridge door. I don't know if I'm ready to forgive you, he said, voice low. But I think I'm ready to hear you. And I knew. That was the first crack of light in a very dark tunnel. I wasn't sure where it would lead. But at least now. We were facing it. We talked. Not like before, short, sharp exchanges while brushing our teeth or passing each other in the hallway. This was different. This was sitting at the kitchen table at 11:17 p.m., barefaced and hollowed out, both of us too tired to pretend we were okay. The lights were dim. Darren had a Gatorade in front of him, unopened. I had the same cold tea I'd reheated 3 times and still hadn't touched. I started. I'm sorry, I said. I know those words don't mean much right now. But I need you to hear them. He didn't interrupt. I looked down at my hands, fingers wrapped tightly around the mug. I felt like I was disappearing, I said quietly. Like every day I became more invisible. Not just to you, but to myself. He finally looked up at me. His eyes were glassy, but he wasn't crying. You could have told me, he said. I wish you had. I know, I whispered. But I didn't know how. Every time I tried, it came out wrong. Or I'd tell myself it wasn't worth starting a fight over. So I swallowed it. Day after day. Until I forgot what I was even hungry for. We sat in that silence again. The kind that feels like both a punishment and a relief. Then he spoke, slow and careful. I didn't stop loving you, he said. But I did stop seeing you. That's on me. His voice cracked a little on the last word. I let myself look at him fully. I didn't mean to find someone else, I said. And I didn't go looking. But I didn't walk away when I should have, either. That part's on me. He nodded, just once. I've replayed everything in my head, he said. All the moments I thought we were okay, and now I don't know if I ever really saw the full picture. Neither did I. That was the terrifying part. You remember our trip to Tybee Island? I asked suddenly. When the hotel messed up the reservation, and we ended up in that awful room with the broken blinds and that mattress that squeaked every time you breathed? He smirked, faintly. Yeah. And the ceiling fan wobbled like it was about to fall off. I smiled, too. Sad, tired. We laughed that whole weekend, I said. It rained every day, and we still found a way to enjoy it. That used to be us. We used to be good at finding joy in small spaces. His face softened. For a second, it looked like the man I married was sitting across from me again. I miss that version of us, he said. Me too. Another long pause. I'm not saying this to guilt you, he said, but when I found that receipt, when I saw your name on it, I felt like I'd been punched through the chest. I closed my eyes. I know. I imagined you with him, he went on. In some cheap room. Laughing. Whispering. And it wasn't just betrayal. It was being replaced. Like you didn't just want someone. You wanted someone else. I swallowed hard. It wasn't him I wanted, I said. It was how he made me feel. Seen. Heard. Like I mattered again. And I stopped giving you that. I didn't answer. Because it wasn't just about what he didn't do. It was about what I allowed myself to crave elsewhere. We talked until 1:45 a.m. Not everything got fixed. Not even close. But we laid it out. The rot. The cracks. The things that festered when we weren't looking. And for the first time in what felt like years, it didn't feel like we were on opposite sides of the table. It felt like we were trying. The next morning, Darren made coffee. Nothing dramatic. No kisses. No declarations. Just 2 mugs on the counter. I took mine, sipped, and stood beside him in the kitchen like we used to when the kids were still home, and mornings were chaotic and filled with forgotten lunches and missing shoes. He didn't speak. But he didn't move away either. Later that day, he texted me. I'm staying at Joel's another night. Just to think. Not to punish you. I replied. Okay. Thank you for yesterday. For hearing me. He sent back a thumbs up. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't a resolution. But it was a start. And sometimes, starts are enough. That evening, I opened the drawer in our nightstand and found a photo I hadn't seen in years. Us, on the pier at Tybee. Wind blowing my hair into his face. Him laughing with his mouth wide open. My eyes squinting in the sun, smiling like I had no idea the future could hurt like this. I stared at it for a long time. Then I set it on the dresser. Not to guilt myself. But to remember that version of us. And to ask, honestly, if it could still be found. Darren didn't come home for 3 days after that. He texted here and there, mostly logistical things. What day was the water bill due? Where was the spare car key? I answered, calmly, clearly. Like co-workers managing a shared project. But at night, the silence stretched like elastic, tight, and painful. I'd find myself reaching for my phone, just to scroll. Just to not feel the absence. I didn't re-download Discord. But the thought hovered, especially late, when the couch was too quiet and the air in the living room felt too still. I watched an entire season of some baking competition show I didn't care about, just to fill the hours. I opened a journal I hadn't touched in years and tried to write out what I was feeling. Mostly I just wrote things like, I don't know who I am when I'm not being needed. What if this was the thing that wakes us up, or finishes us? And, over again, I'm scared to want things again. By the third night, the fridge was nearly empty and the only clean clothes I had left were mismatched socks and a faded t-shirt from my college years. I hadn't stepped outside in 48 hours. That's when the doorbell rang. I froze. Checked the time, 9:47 p.m. I wasn't expecting anyone. I stood there for a second, bare feet on the cold floor, unsure whether to move. Then I opened the door. It was Darren. He looked like hell. But he was holding a grocery bag in one hand. I caught a glimpse of bananas, a box of cereal, a half-gallon of almond milk. Just enough to say, "I remember what you need." He gave a small, sheepish nod. I thought maybe we could eat. I stepped aside. He walked in slowly, like the house might reject him. We didn't hug. Didn't touch. He just went to the kitchen, unpacked the bag, and put things where they belonged like he'd never left. Then he turned and leaned against the counter, arms crossed, eyes tired. "I've been thinking," he said. I waited. He pulled a folded piece of paper from his pocket and set it on the table. I stared at it. Plain. White. No markings. My throat went dry. "What is it?" "It's not what you think," he said quickly. "It's not a lawyer. It's a list." I blinked. "A list?" He nodded. "Things I realized I stopped doing. Things I want to start again. If we have a shot." I opened it with shaking hands. It was handwritten in blocky, all-cap letters. "Talk more than we scroll. Notice you. Really notice. Say thank you for the things I stopped seeing. Take walks again. Even short ones. Cook on Saturdays. No takeout. Ask how you're doing, and listen. Laugh. Even if we have to force it at first. Touch you without needing anything in return. Apologize when I mess up. Not later. Right then. Go to counseling. Together. Not just when it's too late." My eyes blurred before I hit number 5. I held the list against my chest. "I made one too," I said softly. I pulled out my own list, from the back of my journal. Folded and crinkled. Messier handwriting. Ink smudged in the corners from where I'd cried on the page. I handed it to him. He read in silence. "Be honest when I'm not okay. Ask for connection, not attention. Look at you when we talk. Not through you. Put down the phone after dinner. Say what I need before it becomes resentment. Let you in. Even when it's easier to shut down. Trust you'll love again. Slowly. Forgive myself. Even when I want punishment. Let you hold me when I feel lost. Show up. Not perfectly. But fully." He folded it carefully, like it was something sacred. Then he looked at me, eyes red. "I'm not ready to sleep in our bed yet," he said. "But I want to try again. If you do." I nodded. The lump in my throat made it hard to speak. He slept in the guest room that night. I lay awake in our bed, staring at the ceiling fan and listening to the house settle. Somewhere after midnight, I heard soft footsteps. The fridge opening. Water running. The bathroom light flicking on and off. Then silence. But it wasn't a lonely silence. It was the kind of quiet that says, "I'm still here." In the morning, he left a note on the kitchen table. "I'll call the counselor this afternoon. Let's fix what we can. And mourn what we can't. I love you." That never changed. And in that moment, I realized something I hadn't let myself feel in weeks. Hope. Not a big, sweeping, Hollywood kind of hope. Just a quiet ember. flickering. Still alive. We started going to therapy 2 weeks later. Every Wednesday at 6:15 p.m., we sat side by side on an oatmeal-colored love seat in a small office that smelled like eucalyptus and dry erase markers. The therapist, Valerie, wore chunky glasses and never once raised her voice. She had this way of nodding while you talked that made you keep talking, even when you didn't mean to. The first session, I barely looked at Darren. He sat stiff, like someone had forced him into a suit 2 sizes too small. His arms were crossed, jaw clenched, like he was bracing for something to collapse. Valerie asked us to talk about what brought us there. I waited, thinking Darren would start. He didn't. So I spoke first. I heard him, I said, my voice thin and dry. I didn't cheat physically. But I stepped out emotionally. I kept things from him. Important things. I could feel the air in the room tighten. Valerie nodded once. Why? I looked at my hands. At the pale indentation where my wedding ring used to sit. I hadn't put it back on yet. Neither had he. I was lonely, I said. Not the kind you solve with more date nights or vacations. The kind that settles into your bones. I felt like I'd disappeared. I glanced at Darren. His expression didn't change. Valerie turned to him. What are you feeling hearing that? He didn't speak right away. Then, finally, angry. Why? Because I didn't know she felt that way. And now I'm stuck trying to figure out if I missed it, or if she never said it. I looked at him, heart thudding. I tried, I said. But maybe I didn't try loud enough. We didn't solve anything that day. But when we walked back to the car, Darren opened my door for me. Just like he used to. That night, I cried in the shower, not out of guilt this time, but from some overwhelming wave of grief I hadn't seen coming. Not grief for the affair, or for Darren. Grief for me. For all the years I kept pushing myself down to fit into the shape of someone else's wife. For all the times I mistook silence for peace. For all the ways I'd stopped asking for what I needed. The weeks that followed were uneven. One night, we stayed up until 2 a.m. talking about our first apartment, the one above the dry cleaner that smelled like starch and burned toast. We laughed about the way the heater used to bang like it was haunted. That night, he touched my hand across the couch and didn't let go. Another night, he barely said 2 words during dinner and went straight to bed without a glance. I didn't push. Some days were good. Some were just days. We built new habits. Coffee together before work, even if it was only 5 minutes. A shared Spotify playlist we added to without telling each other who picked what. Therapy homework, questions we had to ask each other at dinner. Like, when do you feel most connected to me? Or, what's one thing I did this week that made you feel seen? And always, the same rule, answer honestly. No matter how small or sharp the truth was. Then, last Saturday, something happened. We were cleaning out the closet. Spring cleaning, Darren's idea. It was a normal day, sunlight pouring through the windows, the radio playing low in the background, our jackets and shoes spread all over the floor like a thrift store exploded. I found a showbox in the back of the closet I didn't remember keeping. Inside were old receipts, ticket stubs, birthday cards. And one photo. It was me. Taken on our 2nd anniversary. I was sitting on the edge of a fountain in Savannah, laughing, sunlight in my hair. I looked young. Alive. I didn't remember the photo being taken. Darren glanced over my shoulder and said quietly, "That was the moment I knew I'd marry you." I looked up, startled. "You never told me that." "I know." He took the photo from my hands, held it carefully. "You look happy," he said. I whispered. I felt like I mattered. Then he looked at me, really looked. "And now?" I didn't answer. "Not right away." Then I said, "I'm working on it." That night, he came to bed early. We didn't have sex. We just lay there, facing each other in the dark, legs tangled. His hand on my waist. My head tucked into the space beneath his chin that used to feel like home. He whispered, "I'm scared." "Of what?" I asked. "That we'll go back to sleepwalking. That this, all of it, will fade." I closed my eyes. "It won't," I said. "Because we are not pretending anymore." He didn't reply. But his hand stayed on my waist all night. And for the first time in months, I dreamed of nothing. No motel rooms. No voice notes. No long, dark spaces inside me. Just stillness. Just quiet. Just breath. I found the necklace 3 days ago. It was tucked in the drawer of my nightstand, buried under a tangle of earbuds and receipts from CVS. A small, silver pendant, nothing flashy, on a thin chain I didn't recognize. Not mine. Not anything Darren would have bought. I held it in my palm for a full minute, trying to remember. Then I did. Lane. He'd sent it, months ago, in a small padded envelope with no return address. Just a note. "You said you missed feeling beautiful. Wear this when you need to remember." Back then, I never took it out of the envelope. I told myself I'd throw it away. But I didn't. I hid it. Tucked it somewhere I thought I'd forget. But now, holding it again, it felt radioactive. Darren was in the garage when I found it, organizing tools, pretending not to be watching the clock. I could hear the soft clinking of metal against metal, the low buzz of the Bluetooth speaker he used when he didn't want to think. I walked out to him with the necklace in my hand. He looked up, squinting from under the brim of his hat. "I found something," I said. He wiped his hands on a rag, his eyes narrowing as he saw what I was holding. "I should have thrown it out," I said quickly. "But I didn't. And that's on me." He didn't take it. Just looked at it, then at me. "Why are you showing me this now?" "Because I don't want anything hidden between us anymore." That was true. And hard. And terrifying. Darren nodded once, slowly. He took the necklace from my hand and dropped it into the metal trash can by the door. It clinked against the bottom. He didn't say another word. But he opened his arms, and I stepped into them. It wasn't romantic. Or soft. It was heavy. Like grief. Like forgiveness that wasn't full yet, but trying. That night, we sat on the porch with beers we didn't finish and talked about our kids. About the time Ellie cut her bangs with safety scissors and lied about it so badly we laughed for days. About Ryan's third-grade science project, the vinegar volcano that exploded on the dog. We talked like people who remembered they'd once built a life together. Later, inside, I opened the drawer where I used to keep the burner phone. It was still gone, of course. Darren had thrown it away weeks ago. But I realized I hadn't even thought about that drawer in days. I didn't feel the itch to check messages that weren't there. Didn't hear Lane's voice in the back of my mind anymore. That scared me more than anything. Because part of me had clung to him, not just out of loneliness, but out of fear that if I let him go, I'd have to face the emptiness without a distraction. But the emptiness wasn't there now. Not exactly. There was space. A quiet stretch between me and Darren. But it wasn't hollow. It was waiting. And that felt like something we could build in. In therapy the next day, Valerie asked us both to describe one thing the other person had done in the last week that made us feel known. Darren went first. "She brought me my coffee in the garage," he said. Didn't say anything. Just handed it to me with a smile. Valerie looked at me. What did that feel like? Like I was still in her orbit, he said. I blinked fast. When it was my turn, I said, he waited in the hallway while I had a meltdown in the bathroom. Never knocked. Never asked if I was okay. Just waited. Valerie smiled gently. And that made you feel safe, I whispered. After the session, we sat in the car for a while. Rain tapped softly on the windshield. Darren reached over and took my hand. I'm not done hurting, he said. But I'm also not done wanting us. I squeezed his fingers. I don't know what we'll look like 6 months from now, I said. But I want to find out. He leaned back in his seat. We'll probably still suck at folding laundry. Absolutely. And we'll still argue about the thermostat. You mean you'll still freeze me out every night, I teased. He grinned. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't healed. But it was real. When we pulled into the driveway, the porch light flicked on automatically. It was the same house we'd lived in for almost 12 years. But tonight, it felt like we were walking into something new. Something unfinished, but still alive. Inside, the smell of old candle wax and laundry detergent wrapped around us like memory. And as I closed the front door behind us, Darren turned back and said, I'm ready to wear my ring again. I didn't cry. I just nodded, and said, me too. I put my ring back on that Sunday morning. It had been sitting on the nightstand for months, next to my glasses, an old tube of lip balm, and the paperback I kept pretending I was going to finish. The gold band had a tiny scratch near the edge, barely noticeable unless the light hit it right. I remember noticing that scratch for the first time on our 15th anniversary. I'd meant to get it polished. Never did. I slid it on slowly. The metal felt cold at first, almost unfamiliar, like a stranger's touch. But within seconds, it warmed to my skin like it had never left. Darren came into the room just as I was pulling the comforter back onto the bed. He saw the ring and paused. Didn't say anything. Just nodded once and walked over to his dresser. We were learning how to be quiet without shutting each other out. That was the difference now. Later that afternoon, we took a walk. Nothing dramatic, just a loop around the neighborhood like we used to before life got heavy and schedules got tight. The air was warm and thick with the smell of cut grass and barbecue. Kids zipped past on bikes, their laughter carrying into the open sky. We didn't hold hands. But we walked side by side. We stopped at the park bench near the big sycamore tree. The one we used to sit on during early fall evenings, back when the kids were still in high school and we'd come here just to get away from the noise. Darren looked out over the field, then said, I kept thinking, maybe you wanted to leave. Not just emotionally. Like, for real. I turned to him. I didn't. You booked a room. I know. He rubbed the back of his neck. It's hard not to imagine the worst. I've imagined things too, I said. You, finding someone at work. Or getting so tired of me that you just detach. He raised an eyebrow. You thought I was cheating? No. Not really. But I thought you'd already left me in your mind. And that maybe I was the only one still showing up. He exhaled, slow. That's exactly how I felt. I looked down at my shoes, scuffed white sneakers I'd had since the pandemic. We were both lonely in the same house. Yeah. We sat in silence. Birds chirped in the distance. Somewhere nearby, someone's sprinkler clicked on, hissing softly against the sidewalk. Then he asked, what would you say if I told you I looked him up? I turned to him, heart thudding. You did? Yeah. Just his username at first. Then his email. Found a LinkedIn profile. A Facebook account. Nothing too deep. Just needed to see who he was. I swallowed hard. And? He shrugged. He looks like a guy. Not better than me. Not worse. Just a guy. I didn't know what to say to that. I wasn't comparing, Darren added. I just needed to see the thing that pulled you away. I nodded slowly. I get it. He looked at me again, softer this time. I'm not mad you wanted more. I am mad that you thought you had to go somewhere else to get it. I didn't want to go somewhere else, I said. I wanted to feel wanted. Seen. And when I stopped getting that from you, I didn't know how to ask for it without sounding desperate. You wouldn't have sounded desperate. I thought I would. Or worse, needy. He was quiet for a moment. Then said, we both failed to speak up. Yeah. We stayed on that bench until the sun dipped just low enough to touch the tops of the trees. When we got home, Darren went straight to the basement to mess with the old record player we hadn't touched in years. I heard him pulling out vinyls, adjusting knobs, blowing dust off speaker wires. Then music floated up the stairs. Van Morrison. Into the Mystic. I stood in the kitchen, listening. I walked down the stairs, slowly, and found him sitting on the old plaid beanbag the kids used to fight over. He looked up, surprised to see me, and patted the spot next to him. Saturday. The needle crackled on the record. We didn't say anything. Just leaned into each other. His shoulder against mine. His thumb brushing the back of my hand in slow, absent circles. I rested my head on his chest and closed my eyes. For the first time in what felt like forever, I didn't feel like I was waiting for something to break. Or for someone to leave. Or for some secret to crash down on top of me. I just felt home. Not the house. Not the walls. Him. There was still work to do. So much work. Wounds that hadn't scabbed over yet. Nights where doubt would creep in. Triggers I couldn't predict. Memories I'd have to keep stepping around like glass on tile. But we were still here. And for now. That was enough.